I want to share something with you that I have never said quite this directly in any lecture, any conference, or any clinical setting. In 30 years of practicing neurology and preventive medicine, the single most consistent thing I have observed in patients who maintain sharp cognitive function into their 70s, 80s, and beyond is not a medication, it is not a specific diet, it is not even a particular exercise regimen, it is a ritual, a daily ritual involving tea. And the science behind why it works is some of the most exciting research I have encountered in my entire career. I am Dr. Ming Chen. I am a board certified neurologist with a subspecialty in cognitive aging and preventive neuroscience. I have spent 30 years caring for patients, studying the brain, and bridging the clinical traditions of Western medicine with the evidence-based practices emerging from decades of research into East Asian health patterns. And today I am going to walk you through exactly what the daily Chinese tea ritual looks like, why it works at the neurological level, and how you can adapt it to your own life starting tomorrow morning. Before I get into the 5 components of the ritual, I need to give you a foundational concept, the anchor idea that will make everything else in this video click into place. I want you to think about your brain as a garden, not a machine, not a computer. A garden. A garden needs water, the right nutrients, good drainage, and protection from weeds. What happens to a garden when it is neglected? The soil compacts, the drainage fails, the weeds come in, and the plants that took decades to grow begin to wither. Your brain works the same way. Neurons need a rich supply of blood and oxygen. The cerebral vasculature, the network of vessels that feeds the brain, needs to remain flexible and clear. The glymphatic system, which is your brain's own drainage network, needs to function properly, and the inflammatory weeds that come with aging need to be managed actively. The daily Chinese tea ritual practiced correctly addresses all 4 of these needs simultaneously. That is why it works. Not because of one magic molecule, but because it tends the whole garden. Let me give you the science first because I want you to understand what you are working with. The cognitive benefits of tea consumption have been studied seriously for about 25 years, but the research that truly changed the conversation was a large-scale longitudinal study published in the Journal of Nutrition, Health, and Aging in 2017 by researchers at the National University of Singapore. They followed 849 adults over age 55 for 2 years and found that regular tea drinkers, those consuming tea at least 4 times per week, had a 50% lower risk of cognitive decline compared to non-tea drinkers. Among those carrying the APOE4 gene, which is the primary genetic risk factor for Alzheimer's disease, the risk reduction was even more dramatic, 86% from tea. But here is what most people miss when they read that study. The benefit was not simply from drinking tea, it was from the ritual, the consistency, the temperature, the type of tea, and importantly, the behavioral pattern that surrounds it. The researchers noted that the most protected individuals were those for whom tea was a daily, structured practice, not an occasional beverage. Let me walk you through the 5 components of the ritual. Component 1, the tea selection, and why this specific choice matters more than you think. Chinese physicians, when recommending tea for cognitive health, overwhelmingly favor 2 types: green tea, particularly Dragon Well or Longjing, and aged oolong tea. The reason is biochemical. Both are rich in a class of compounds called catechins, specifically EGCG, epigallocatechin 3-gallate. EGCG does something remarkable in the brain. It crosses the blood-brain barrier, which most molecules cannot do, and it directly inhibits the aggregation of beta-amyloid proteins. Beta-amyloid plaques are one of the primary pathological features of Alzheimer's disease. They are the weeds in the garden. EGCG help prevent those plaques from forming, and in early stages may help clear existing ones. A study published in Phytomedicine by researchers at the University of Shizuoka in Japan found that green tea catechins reduced beta amyloid plaque burden by 40% in animal models, and a subsequent human observational study showed that daily green tea consumers had significantly lower rates of white matter lesions, those small areas of vascular damage in the brain that accumulate silently and erode cognitive function over decades. Now, the practical point, not all green tea is created equal. Bottled green teas, flavored teas, and many commercial tea bags have dramatically lower catechin concentrations than properly brewed loose leaf tea. If you use tea bags, choose a reputable brand and steep them for at least 3 to 4 minutes. Loose leaf Dragon Well or Oolong will give you the highest concentration of active compounds. And if you genuinely cannot tolerate caffeine, aged white tea is the lowest caffeine option that still contains meaningful EG/CG levels. Component 2, the temperature and the preparation. This is where most Western tea drinkers make a critical mistake. Green tea should never be brewed with boiling water. This is one of the most consistent recommendations in both Chinese tea culture and the emerging science, and the reason is elegant. Boiling water, 100 degrees Celsius, destroys a significant portion of the catechins you are trying to preserve. It also releases tannins in excess, which both bitters the tea and reduces the bioavailability of the protective compounds. The ideal brewing temperature for green and white tea is between 75 and 85 degrees Celsius, which is approximately 170 degrees Fahrenheit. For oolong, you can go slightly higher, 85 to 90 degrees. In practical terms, boil your water, then let it sit for 2 to 3 minutes before pouring. That simple pause preserves the neurological benefit of what you are about to drink. There is something else about this preparation step that the science is only beginning to capture. The act of preparing tea mindfully, waiting, watching the water, smelling the leaves, activates what is called the default mode network in the brain. The default mode network is engaged during reflection, self-referential thought, and mental consolidation. It is, in neurological terms, the brain's maintenance mode. Brief daily activations of the default mode network through slow sensory focus rituals have been linked in fMRI studies to improve hippocampal connectivity, the hippocampus being the structure most vulnerable to Alzheimer's-related decline. In other words, the act of slowing down to make the tea properly is itself neurologically protective. The ritual is not decorative, it is part of the medicine. Component 3, the timing. When you drink your tea determines how well it works. Traditional Chinese tea practice prescribes specific windows for tea consumption, and these align remarkably well with what we now understand about circadian biology and brain health. The primary tea session is in the morning, roughly 30 to 60 minutes after waking and after a light meal, never on a completely empty stomach because the tannins in tea can cause gastric irritation and temporarily impair iron absorption. The secondary session is mid-afternoon, between 2 and 4 o'clock, what Chinese culture calls the afternoon clarity window. Why does afternoon matter? Your brain's glymphatic system, like its internal waste clearance drainage network, operates primarily during sleep. But research from the University of Rochester, published in Science, showed that this glymphatic activity can be partially activated during relaxed, low-stimulation waking periods in the afternoon. Compounds in tea, particularly L-theanine, have been shown to promote the specific brainwave state, alpha waves, associated with this relaxed alertness. Drinking tea in the afternoon, slowly and without screens, may actually be supporting your brain's own housekeeping functions. The one time to avoid tea, within 2 hours of your intended bedtime, because even low caffeine levels can fragment sleep architecture, and disrupted sleep is itself one of the strongest predictors of accelerated cognitive decline. I want to stop here for a moment because I am genuinely curious about where you are right now with this. Do you already drink tea regularly? Is it something you do mindfully with intention as part of a daily routine? Or is it something you grab occasionally in a disposable cup while doing something else? I ask because so much of what I see in my practice is the difference between people who consume something and people who practice something. The outcome in cognitive aging is strikingly different between those two groups. Tell me in the comments, do you drink tea, and if so, what kind? I read every comment on the Dr. Ming Chen channel, and your answers genuinely shape the videos I create next. And if this video is giving you information you have never heard from a physician before, please take a moment right now and hit that like button. It is the single most important thing you can do to help this channel reach more people who need this kind of content. And subscribe if you have not already. What comes next in this series will change the way you think about protecting your brain. Component 4, the companion practice. What traditional Chinese tea culture does alongside the tea that Western observers almost always miss. Here is a detail that gets lost in every Western article about the health benefits of tea. The way Chinese physicians and their elderly patients drink tea is almost never alone, almost never rushed, and almost never accompanied by screens. The tea ritual is a social or reflective practice. It involves conversation, or sitting quietly, or reading something physical, or simply being present. And this companion practice is not incidental. It is, neurologically speaking, half the benefit. A landmark study published in PLOS Medicine followed more than 11,000 adults over a decade and found that social engagement and cognitively stimulating activities were independently predictive of cognitive resilience, and that the combination of moderate caffeine from tea with social or reflective engagement produced synergistic cognitive benefits greater than either factor alone. The researchers theorized that the mild dopaminergic and noradrenergic stimulation from tea catechins and caffeine, combined with the neural activation of meaningful social or intellectual engagement, created what they called an enriched neural state, a window of heightened synaptic plasticity where learning and memory consolidation were enhanced. My patient Eleanor, 74 years old, a retired architect from San Francisco, came to see me 3 years ago after her daughter called me concerned about her mother's memory lapses and increasing social withdrawal. Eleanor had been living alone since her husband passed, and her days had become isolated and unstructured. Her cognitive testing showed early signs of mild cognitive impairment. We talked for a long time about her daily routines. I suggested, gently, without prescription, that she begin a daily tea ritual with structure. Morning green tea prepared slowly, alone, as a meditative practice, and afternoon tea with her neighbor or a friend, 3 times a week. 6 months later, her repeat cognitive assessment showed improvement across every domain. Her daughter called me in tears. Eleanor told me the tea had given her back her afternoons. I told her it had given her back her brain. But really, it had given her back her life. Component 5, the long game. What happens in the brain after years of consistent practice? I want to close with the most compelling piece of evidence I have found because I think it reframes the entire way we should think about cognitive aging. A population study published in Translational Psychiatry in 2019 used MRI brain imaging to compare tea drinkers and non-tea drinkers among 207 adults aged 60 to 90. The finding was extraordinary. Habitual tea drinkers showed significantly better organized and more efficiently connected brain networks than non-tea drinkers. Specifically, the regions most associated with memory, executive function, and information processing speed showed greater structural integrity. The researchers described the brains of habitual tea drinkers as more efficiently wired, with information traveling more effectively between regions. In the language of my garden metaphor, decades of daily tea practice had not just watered the garden, it had rebuilt the irrigation channels. The most important word in that study is habitual, not occasional, not periodic. Habitual, daily, practiced. This is a 30-year investment you are making in the architecture of your own brain. And the extraordinary thing is that it costs almost nothing. A quality loose-leaf green tea, brewed correctly, costs pennies per cup. The time investment is 10 to 15 minutes per session. The neurological return is potentially decades of preserved cognitive function. I want to tell you something I tell patients in my consulting room when they ask me what they should realistically do to protect their brain as they age. I tell them the truth. There is no magic pill. There is no intervention that will guarantee you escape cognitive decline. But there are practices, old practices, proven practices, that dramatically tilt the odds in your favor. The daily Chinese tea ritual is one of the most accessible, best evidence, and most consistently impactful of those practices. I have recommended it to hundreds of patients. I practice it myself, and now you have the full picture of why and how. Here is your action plan. These are concrete steps you can begin tomorrow. Number 1. Choose your tea. Purchase loose-leaf green tea, Dragon Well or Longjing if you can find it, or a quality gunpowder green tea. If loose leaf is not practical, choose a reputable organic green tea bag. This is your primary daily tea. Number 2, adjust your water temperature. Boil your water, let it sit for 2 to 3 minutes, then pour. You are targeting 75 to 85 degrees Celsius. This single change preserves the catechins that make the tea neurologically active. Number 3, schedule 2 sessions. Morning tea, 30 to 60 minutes after waking with a light breakfast. Afternoon tea between 2 and 4 o'clock. Set a reminder if needed for the first 2 weeks until it becomes automatic. Number 4, add a companion practice. During at least one of your daily tea sessions, put down your phone and your screens. Read something physical. Sit with someone you care about. Or simply sit quietly and let your mind wander without direction. This is not empty time. This is brain maintenance. Number 5, commit to the long game. Write down today's date somewhere visible. The research shows that meaningful structural brain benefits from habitual tea consumption accumulate over months and years. You are starting something today that will reward you for decades. This is general medical information, and it is not a substitute for personalized medical care. Before making any significant changes to your health routine, please consult your own physician, especially if you take medications that may interact with tea compounds, are sensitive to caffeine, or have a gastrointestinal condition. To everyone in this community, you are here because you take your health seriously, because you believe that the choices you make today determine the person you will be at 80. I believe that too. That belief is why I created the Dr. Ming Chen channel, and it is why I will keep creating it. If this video gave you something useful, please share it with someone whose mind you want to protect. Leave me a comment with your tea journey. Whether you are just starting or have been a tea drinker for decades, I want to hear it. Give this video a like if you feel it was worth your time. And subscribe, because the next video is going to address the sleep habit that neurologists consider the most underrated cognitive protector of all. And the connection to traditional Chinese medicine is something I think will genuinely surprise you. I will see you there.